Hello, my name's Asher Minns. I'm from the Tyndall Centre for Climate Change Research in the UK. I've been working in climate change for quite a few years now, and as a result of probably being to very many COP-type meetings, I'm now much more interested in what the business community can deliver than the policy community. And so my question is really, in terms of the commercial imperative, so we've had presentations from Philips and Merrill Lynch. Obviously there is a commercial need for, or you see future opportunity, future markets here. But my question is really to do with how you see it sort of play out into the long-term future, because we always have this conflict between short-term policy making, short-term business balance sheets, but then we're trying to take quite long-term decisions here. So I know very little about business. I'd be interested as an insight into those relationships between long-term decisions and short-term decisions around commercial imperatives. Thank you.
I agree, it's a really vital question. I mean, there was a slight implication. I think you said you're more interested in business, what they can deliver, but of course, as the rest of the question implied, you've got to have the two moving together effectively. And I just say that I've had this debate with quite a lot of policymakers, including some senior ministers, who tend to say, well, you can't have certainty because circumstances change and you have to adapt policies to change circumstances. But I think that's slightly missing the point. We don't expect things to stay frozen. We expect policies to evolve, and we know that governments need to retain some flexibility. But if when ministers or governments or multilateral organisations are making these policies, they would give us a long-term direction of travel with some credible actions about how they're going to move, if you like, the train from this station along the intermediate stations to the terminus, then that will give confidence to private sector people that the risk is manageable. You can't do away with it altogether. There are going to be downturns or whatever. But particularly in that policy, if you say the criteria on which things might change, so you remove some of the unknowns, and for example, on support mechanisms for renewables, you tie the digression rates for the support to deployment rates or costs or some combination of both, and then business can calibrate that risk and deal with it. The second point I'd like to make is that where possible, policymakers should use market mechanisms. I know we're going through quite a tough period on the emissions trading scheme in the European Union at the moment, partly because of the downturn, the economic downturn. But phase 3 takes us up to 2020, and there's a level of reduction in emissions which is proposed beyond 2020. Now, if you were to do that with a carbon tax, then every single time your finance minister stands up, he's going to be juggling all his fiscal balls in the air. And that will be probably subject to adjustment up or down, but it doesn't matter. It just means that you have uncertainty every year. So they're the two things I would say. Try and make the criteria clear sense of direction so business can understand and decide what risks it's credible to take. And secondly, where possible, use market mechanisms, because these tend to be set for longer periods.
Yeah, actually, I think, Joan, you've summarised the key points very well. I mean, I will simply add that there is a risk of lag times, in part because of the way the different communities need to operate. And let me explain what I mean there. So today's policy is set usually on yesterday's science. With the IPCC process, I think it's a 5 to 7 year lag time. And today's policy puts in place tomorrow's investments in innovation, and sometimes there's a lag time between the policy and the innovation and the investment flows. So in fact, given the way the science is changing, the cycle needs to become tighter and tighter and shorter and shorter. And the risk that we all face is that unless the direction of travel is made very clear, it doesn't need to be perfect, the mechanisms don't need to have all the details sorted out, but the direction of travel is clear, because then at least we know which direction we're heading, and we don't know how fast we're heading in terms of the flows of capital, but at least we know the direction. And I will simply say that a lot of people knock the Australian program for having a price floor of 15 Australian dollars a ton starting in 2015, and the fact that only 7 Chinese cities and provinces have carbon caps in place, but these little steps are giving those in private sector a direction of an indication of what's to come. There's obviously no price certainty, but there is it will spur lots of innovation and create the kind of change which is necessary to to stimulate more low carbon technology.
Harry?
I think a very good question. So what I would like to say is that both in the business environment as well as in the political environment, we can only achieve sustainable, good short-term results when they are based on a long-term vision. And that is particularly clear. I'll exemplify that with one example in lighting. So you saw some of the numbers on global energy saving. Well, we are working now with the European Commission, because you see in Europe, because of the budget issue, the Euro crisis, there is some shyness on mandatory energy efficiency targets per year. There's shyness on renovating buildings. Lighting alone can save 30 billion euro in energy cost. But then in addition, and that is where also public vision needs to come in, that makes a difference of 140 power plants. So that is an investment that Europe would not need to make of 300 billion. So what I'm saying is you have direct energy efficiency savings, much larger than just from our sector, but then a 10-fold multiplier in what is not needed in power infrastructure investments. And that is the best budget relief that people can seek. So what we need to do, business and private combined, is to show the interlinked nature of today's problems with the actual solution. So instead of shying away and being slower, having escape excuses, we need to see, no, what is all happening today is even a reason more to act decisively. One example, a second example from our side is we had the same challenges. And we had a few years ago also, the few incandescent light bulbs were 5 years ago 2/3 of our annual volume. But then we looked into the future and felt, this is not the future. So not in any way. It's not good for our consumers. It's not good for the energy bill. It's also not good for the ecological bill. So we decided to call for a global phase out of incandescent lighting. So for us, the whole technology, the whole industrial infrastructure, supply chain, business models, everything changes. And I can also tell you, it's a lot of work, but it's also fun for all those involved, because you're working collectively on the right thing. And it's possible, and I think there are many more examples. There are more happening also, but I think if we are not afraid of change and see it as an opportunity with widespread benefits, then I think we can realize the momentum by working together in public and private partnerships.
Okay, I want to say something about what happened in Italy. As happened also in most other countries, the renewables use was based initially on incentives, public incentive system. And that attracted many investors, private investors, national, Italians, but mostly abroad investors. And what happened in last times that the government reduced these incentive systems, and there was a very notable reduction in attention by these private sectors. And that means, of course, that in a short-term view, what is needed is a real policy convincement that should be translated in, of course, in a very concrete and permanent incentives system. Of course, it is only needed for the startup. What we think at long-term view, with the long-term view, should be created a market, inside market of the renewables, of the efficiency, at a really local level. People that live in small towns should understand what does it mean to invest and to buy renewables, in what means green economy. Because of course, in short terms, it is a cost. It is a cost, of course. You should look more ahead to understand what is the payback for the citizens that live in a small town. And what we have done with this governance, what we are trying to do, it's not easy, of course, but what we are trying with this governance is to make people understand, to create a local markets of the green economy. We think this could be an answer.